Hello. For those of you that are new to my channel, just to let you know, I keep my spiritual beliefs separate from my NASA work. This is going to be a piece on the Skylab. I do pieces on my spiritual beliefs, but they are completely separate. Just to let you know, so I just want to make my NASA research as accessible to everybody as possible, and I want to talk about some plans that I have for the future that I hope to get people on board with. But let's get stuck into this Skylab mission. So for those of you who are not overly familiar with Skylab, they launched the vehicle itself up into space, and then they sent 3 missions up where the astronauts went to be on the vehicle that was allegedly going around the Earth, and then it crashed back down to Earth in Australia. Now the footage is in many parts done in small clips, although I have found some that is substantially longer, and there is the promise of new footage coming next year. So it's supposed to be out this year, but I'll get into that later. So there is quite a bit of stuff to look at, so let's tuck in. So the footage that we're looking at here has been a bit of a mystery for how they did it, and I do think that I figured it out. What I think it is they're on a jumbo jet here, and they are using 1/3 gravity. Now I know they're floating around in this, but I do have some imagery of someone in 1/3 gravity floating around, and it is about momentum that is able to get you from point A to point B whilst floating, and I can show that. So first up, I want to look at the sizings of a jumbo jet versus the sizing of the Skylab. Okay, so just very quickly, the diameter of the Skylab is shown here, and so the acrobat ring is in this section here marked 6, around about there, and if we take a closer look here, we can see that in feet, section 6, which is this section here, oh yeah, there it is 21.6 feet in diameter. That's the external measurement. So if we take a look, that's 21.6 feet is 6 meters 58, and if we look here, we can see I've added this ring for effect. So we got 6 meters 10 is the external measurement of a jumbo jet. Now obviously they're going to have a thicker exterior to stand the pressure of a vacuum, and so the ring would be an identical size to that as though it were in a jumbo jet. Right, and also for those that are really picky about this kind of thing, I've researched the building of a jumbo jet. So you can see here, this is the structural support for the frame, and here is the structural support for the crossbeam for the passenger deck. Now this could be braced like building a window in a house, and you could brace it going along this way, and if it, for whatever structural capacity it might need, you would then just continue it once the gap was sufficient enough. You would leave these sections in where you could, but you could put a beam going across here and support going that way. Remember that this would be bought the jumbo jet would be bought specifically for the task, and it would never be operating at full capacity, the full loads that are expected. And so if we just have a look a bit further along, so you get a good view of it there, where the structure, this is where they join the 2 sides together. Here they coming into place, and you can see that the floor, let me just get a bit more sensitive on that. Yeah, so you can see that the floor is down here and the structural joins are here, so you can brace this and remove at least part of the section of the floor here. Yeah, here we've got the floor down here, the structural joins here. So just like putting a window into a house, you could brace the necessary area, and again structural joints there. So I have looked into that and satisfied that it would be possible for a plane that isn't carrying the full load, that this floor just wouldn't be necessary. The bottom part is structural. We'll just go back to, oh yeah, so there's the structural part of the bottom. I don't absolutely convinced you couldn't get rid of that, but it is pretty shallow, and I've allowed for that in my little diagram. And if any of that sounds too fanciful, too much effort to go to, here we have ESA on the record, European Space Agency, saying that they have the parabolic flights are very demanding manoeuvres. The 0G Airbus has been specially strengthened, so they've specially strengthened that one. NASA have footage of people training for the Skylab missions on parabolic flight. Right, I want to cover parabolic flights just quickly. This guy gets it.
Often called parabolic flights, a zero-gravity aircraft flight is a rather simple yet predominantly misunderstood concept. The parabolic aspect of the flight is actually irrelevant when it comes to the physics of mimicking weightlessness. The trick is all in the dive. When the aircraft begins to free fall.
Anyway, so that's that. He's right though. My investigation has shown that the parabolic arc might give an extra amount of time as you, if you're trying to maximise the fall time in 0G, but the true 0G comes from the fall, and this is why I think they don't do this when they do the 0G flights. They don't do the proper free fall. It might be more risky, so that might be one reason that they don't do it, but it is known and on record that you can get extra time by falling further. Right, so looking at this parabolic arc, which I think is not how they get the bulk of the 0G effect, you can see that even in this they have the different angles of attack. So you've got the Martian gravity, which gives 33 seconds. You've got the lunar gravity, which gives 24 seconds, and the zero gravity, which gives 21 seconds. But if you notice, as they fall there's definitely a noticeable difference in what you see on the 0G planes when they do the different gravity status, and it shows that you can get longer time by doing the 1/6 gravity. The 1/3 is the one that gets the longest amount of time. The 1/6, the lunar gravity, middle, and the zero gravity gets the longest. Now, I don't think when I was doing the calculations for the space shuttle heights, I was using the splat calculator, which does not allow for any airflow whatsoever over the falling object, so it accelerates. Now, the heights that they were having to get to get genuine 0G would have been about 70 kilometers, I do believe still, and they'd want to be pulling out around about 90,000 feet. I don't think that I was wrong about that, because you would be falling and accelerating in air that was very thin, but you would get the genuine 2 minutes of 0G. Now, for the Skylab fraud, I think they used the jumbo jet, and for quite a bit of it they used the Martian gravity. For some of it they used the zero gravity. For some of it they probably used the lunar gravity. And there are some articles, that some footage that is difficult to explain even using the Martian gravity, but I will get into that. None of this is straightforward. I am just really trying to figure out how they've done the fraud, and I think that by getting NASA on the record with all the footage, which I'm going to make an appeal for at the end of this presentation, I think we will be able to get to the truth of how they've done this. But let's just have a quick look over here. McDonnell Douglas built the Skylab. They were taken over by Boeing. Incidentally, the space shuttle was built by Rockwell International, which was later taken over by Boeing. Now, here we have a Boeing 747 jumbo jet, year of release 1970. I think this was Model 2. The Skylab's mission starting in 1973, and you can see here it has the 45,000 feet ceiling. Now that would be cruising altitude fully laden, so I do think you could get some extra thousands of feet. And I just want to show you something that that Boeing would easily consider building a specialized. They did 4 specialized 747s for what is known as Air Force One, and here 4 of these with a ceiling, a higher ceiling of 45,932, which is 46,000. Boeing are obviously building stuff for the government and the military, and the company, if Boeing weren't fully on board, they would build it to the specifications asked for. But it's interesting that they put McDonnell Douglas, who is a military contractor, as the builders of the Skylab, because they could have adapted it further to the specific requirements, using the Secrecy Act and what have you, the specific requirements of faking the Skylab, which could have meant an increased altitude, or goodness me, increased altitude, or gutting the whole thing and building it so it looks like the Skylab. Now, just to get a little bit off topic here, I just want to mention that the architects and engineers for 9/11 Truth have a date in court, and whatever you may say about 9/11, about the Israeli connection and what have you, and these guys were called shills for years, but here they are all these years later pursuing their days in court, and I supported their billboards, and I've donated quite a bit to these guys because they're organised, they get the word out. 9/11 would have had to have been done with the American military industrial complex, and one of the thoughts that crossed my mind when they first did 9/11 was, how could they possibly think, when I realised 9/11 was an inside job, was that how could they possibly think that they would get away with it? And I want you to consider that if those companies, Rockwell, McDonnell, the people who have been the American military industrial complex who were in on the building of the Skylab and the space shuttle, and are well aware that people think they live on a spinning ball, when all what they need to do is study it carefully, and they'll see that it certainly isn't what we've been told. They knew about controlling the narrative. They control the narrative to where we think we live on a spinning ball, and they completely controlled the narrative regarding 9/11 and the evidence as it was presented in the mainstream. It just is an interesting point for me that 9/11 couldn't have been done without the American military industrial complex. They are the ones who profited, as well as the shadow government type figures and the people in power. So how could they be so bold as to think they'd get away with something so obviously false? It just all seems somewhat connected to me. So on with the presentation. You have this guy here simulating Martian gravity. In a moment he goes on the record as showing that, and you can see that when he does this, he's doing his little jumps, and then he does his slam dunk of the basketball, but you can see in the background that other people are still doing their little jumps. So it is obviously, there it is, simulated Martian gravity, and he's doing his little jumps here, and then with enough momentum, and it's not that much, he managed to do a slam dunk. They do cut the scene here, but you can see that other people continuing with their little jumps, and then there it is. There they are in the background doing their little jumps, and he's doing a 0G maneuver, and that's in Martian gravity. Now they go on the record as saying this is now lunar gravity, and they later go on the record to say this is full 0G. Really interesting. And lastly, before we get back to the NASA footage, this is Usain Bolt in 0G. Now, I'm not convinced he's in 0G. All the clickbait trailers say that he is, but you can see that as he pushes off there, he definitely comes back down. But it's just an interesting piece of footage as we head into this. Now, we'll start with a nice easy one. This, I believe, is recorded in full 0G on the Jumbo Jet, and there is no longer footage that I've been able to find of this. Now clearly, if they're going to set up the camera, if we were to ask for the original footage, each one of these short segments should have a massively longer segment to it. When we look at some of the other footage that is released, and that there is much longer segments to, it is interesting that the original of this isn't out in the general arena, albeit in whatever condition, but it just isn't. Now, if it is in the general arena, if somebody has access to this footage in its unedited format, please give me the links for it, or send it to me, or whatever, because I would love to see it, and it would be really important evidence. So let's have the originals if anyone's got them. Let's ask for it. If not, there's the way these things are recorded on canisters of film. This has obviously been edited in the studio, but the originals, it would reveal so much. So I really want those. So that's a really easy one to explain under a fraud. I just want to show you the difference in image quality from what we get from the ground versus what we get from up in space. Now, the image quality, we could expect this sort of level for the canisters that were coming back to the ground, whether this camera is identical to the one they used or slightly different. I think their image quality, if we were to ask for the originals, should be improved, and would at least get to see the quality that it was originally filmed in. I mean, you can see so much more detail here than you can. The next section we're going to look at is a video downlink, so the quality, they have their built-in excuse for that. But it is the quality of the stuff that came from canisters that's back down on the ground that is very noticeably different. This was shot in the same year, maybe a different camera system, but it would be very interesting and beneficial to get the originals, I think. And just before we do the breakdown of this clip here, there is a bit here where it cuts very quickly from one scene to the next, and another advantage, if we were to have the originals, this is a video downlink, and they're doing everything they can to make it sound like it's live. I don't believe for a moment that it is, but if the original hasn't been edited and it is presented in this format, it would be proof that this isn't live and proof of a forecast. I'll just play this.
Settle some old bets. If we're going to have the Skylab 500, have you got a pretty good picture of the dome now?
So this is the only guy in trousers, and he seems to be asking, have you got a pretty good picture of the dome now? So there may have been an edit, but if this is in the original downlink, which we would get if we asked for all the original material, we'd get the full length version, and we'd know whether this has been cut or not by somebody doing a presentation and did it for convenience. But he goes from the guy having the trousers here is in the next scene immediately, and he wouldn't have had the other two in shorts. He wouldn't have had time to get there. It's not far, but he could never have done it as quickly as this, because he looks up here and then he's in the next scene. So it does sound like that maybe it has been edited, but I would just love to get the originals, because that would be absolute proof that they are doing a broadcast pretending it's live when it's not. Right, change of plan. We're going to do this scene next. We'll do the video down link in a sec. So this is someone getting dressed into their astronaut suit. It's not done in full, and this in the sound, when the sound's up, it says they've done it in stop motion type thing. So I can understand why they'd want to do that, to get the maximum amount of film footage that they could, but I think this should have gone on longer. Let's just play this. So this is in the actual speed that it's presented, and this would be a consequence of slowing down the frame rate and playing it at normal speed, and that's fine to get longer footage, but they still don't cover the whole episode. This is I've got it on loop. It comes to an end in a minute, so my claim still stands that there is no unedited footage. So this is the loop of them doing this. Now, looking at this, I was thinking, have they done this on the 0G plane, or have they done this with wires? And I thought, looking at it, I think it's probably wires. They certainly can cut where they want to in this, and there would be no way you'd be able to prove one way or the other. This is just the next scene. I should have edited that out. So here it is one more time, and then we're going to stop this, go back and have a look. There's a couple of bits that I think you're going to find very interesting on this, and that I think is potential. Well, I think it's evidence that of a fraud. Obviously, the fanboys and the image quality is pretty dreadful, so there will be arguments to be had against what I say. So we'll just take this back to where I've done some marks on it. Now, in a moment I'm going to cut to the full screen, but I just want to show you, this is my editing equipment, and this is it on its maximum setting. So this means it slows down the frame rate to the maximum that I can, so I can pull it out again and I can go along. Now I've marked this as a cut example, so I want to go down and just show you how easy it would be for them to edit this. You know, I accept their excuse that they want to get a longer film, but this isn't the full film. You can tell by the beginning and end of it. You know, if this was a full film recording this, so there should be more of this if this were genuine. So what I want to show here is this is me going literally at the absolute maximum slowdown I can, one frame. Now, in that one frame, they both completely change positions, so they could actually do a cut here, move the wires around, or if they were doing it in the 0G plane, they could easily just try and stand in the same position. And if anyone hasn't seen my piece on Upside Down and Inside Out, the song that was recorded on a 0G plane, it's worth looking at. It's a bit convoluted, but you'd probably be better off watching the making of that. They did a great job of nailing that. So here's the one frame again. So they're both in completely different positions, and so that could be done in 0G, or that could actually be a cut, and it's all like this all the way through. So, but I accept their excuse for this. They want to get longer film footage. They said it's just done a stop motion type thing, but that would be the reason that I would think about that. Think that they'd do that. So I'm going to cut now back to okay, so this is just a small one, nothing major here apart from and I've got better than this, so it just looks a little bit like a wire to me here as we pull that through frame at a time. I think that's the wire there. Now there's lots of lines on here, but this would be consistent with a wire, and I've got better than this coming up. So there's the wire still. And just very quickly, for those of you who haven't seen the Space Shuttle as a 0G plane series, I did cover the hidden wire effect just by the lighting. The wires are still, obviously you can see them all in plain sight at certain angles and in certain lighting conditions, but in others they're hidden. So if you obscure the vision quality and take careful consideration for the lighting, I do think it's very easy to hide the wires, and given that you would also get post-production in a lot of cases, you can then paint them out with that technology that was available at the time. and the top would be supported. So he's using this, so that's wired off to the side, and that gives him the support. Then there'd be another wire running through there somewhere, which would give him the support that he needs to make it look weightless as he messes around. But anyway, that it wasn't nothing major there. It's just consistent. So we'll just move along to the next one. Okay, so right, so this section, I just think this looked like an odd maneuver when I saw it. It looks like he's ducking down under the wire to me. So this, I'll just play it at real speed. I'll play that again so you can see it. So it just looks to me like he ducks under the wire, and then I'll just slow that down so you can see what I mean. So I've given you a small amount of evidence that perhaps there's a wire there, very disputable. But this is what, so if we watch this maneuver, so here we go, a frame at a time. So that's me drawing in the line of roughly where I'd imagine the wire would be, and he ducks down underneath. Now you could say he's just manoeuvring into a better position than 0G, but he could also actually be manoeuvring under a wire, and then we'll just move that in a little bit there, so the wire's now there. And he comes back up on the other side, the wire being on the other side of his hand now. So this is with the change position, under he goes, back around. So that I just found interesting. It just looked like a weird maneuver. But this is the one that really, because I've looked over too many horizons and are not satisfied with the explanations that we get, I slow this down and look at the area where I'd expect to find the wires and evidence of it. So I'll just move that into maximum slowness. So there's the mark. So here we go. This for me is they've moved the wire around now. So well, you'll see in a sec, but I think they've moved it around so it's coming off here. I can't get rid of that. I can edit that out in a sec. Let's move it over there for now. Okay, so now if we zoom in on here, so this is maximum zoom. As we move this one step forward, you can see here what looks exactly like, in the exact place that you'd expect to see it, part of the rigging for a harness. And let's move that one step, and it just appears very briefly there. Now there's an amount of movement gone on, so this is time delay. So wherever this has gone to in that time, they've either not, they could paint it out, although I think mostly they rely on the fact that the colouring, so it might be lined up with this, or it might have been at a different angle, maybe more up before, but that is definitely, for me, looks consistent with the rigging that you'd expect to find in the exact place where you'd expect to find it. And just, I've got another call out up here, let's just remind myself what that one was for. Oh yeah, just for the same thing again. So here it comes up again later, so you've got the original one. So we've got that one there, moving along, you see the wire, you can just, for me, you can see something is coming across there, in the exact place where you'd expect to find it. That's it again, that's, so going backwards now, go back to the original one that I showed you just now, going step at a time. There it is, that's the original one. So, this is consistent with a Ford for me. It's, that's just how it is, and, I know people will see what they want to see. But this is an error consistent with the technology they had at the time, and this is what we get now, is errors consistent with the technology that we have. And you'd have to study topic, and I hope that you do, but I've seen far too many errors by NASA that are consistent with a Ford, and far too many scenes shot on wires where it's obvious that there's an up. Sometimes it's not quite so obvious, but anything, a lot of the time it is. So anyway, so that was that. Right, I don't want to spend too much time on this one because the image quality is very poor. I have found one with a better image quality, but it's a shorter version. Again, would be really helpful to have the originals, but this is what I think they're doing on this one. So I think they're walking along the bottom here, and they're going to come out and get winched up. I'll show you an example of some winching. So along he comes, straight along to here, and I'm pretty sure he's walking there, and straight out of there getting winched directly up to his winch, and then he goes across here, and this is totally possible, holding onto a frame up here. Same with him, walks out, gets winched up. It's too poor quality to do any close-ups of the looking for wires. I mean, their arms go virtually invisible at some points. That's how bad the quality is on zoom in, so I'm not going to waste my time doing that. I found lots of anomalies. There was one as he was coming up there, but it's just it's too easy to argue against. So they've all been winched up, now they're getting winched down. They could have done a cut at that point, just as they're all at the top. There's a blank scene, so it's a fixed camera, and they can work in close proximity like this. I think he just walked off there. He's getting lowered down. Oh no, yeah, so he's going to do his little acrobatic act here. So he's holding onto this guy's arm for support while he levels up, which is fine. You expect to do that in 0G, but I will just stop it for at one point in here where it looks like he loses balance and is on a wire rather than. So we're looking straight down. The wires are coming up either side of him. So he does this, and then he seems to lose his balance halfway through it. The other guy has to grab him. It just doesn't seem consistent to me with somebody who is in genuine 0G. Let's watch this. No, it's a little while before it comes up yet. So he gets steadied off, gets his balance. Obviously the guy doing the voiceover is loving this. And I've tried looking to see whether that's his tummy or belt or a harness device. If you'd have to look them up, I might show one, but it's just the quality's too poor to tell either way. And there's these weird white marks. I think that's the poor video quality, but it's just, yeah, like I was saying, it's just pointless trying to go in for a zoom up. So he does his first little twist, possibly something there, but again, zoom up on it, it's too inconclusive to even waste the time. Goes back around, and it's coming up in a moment. I did mark it. So he does this, and yeah, and he loses his balance after this one. So he does that. Let me just get rid of that. Now, does that look like someone who's in 0G? Or does that look like someone on a string? Let's just go back and watch that maneuver again. Might just zoom in a little bit more. Let's go watch that again, because I think that's sort of like, so he's doing really well up until this point. String, we're looking directly down. His gear set is moving above him, and he just seems to lose his balance. There's no reason he would do that in 0G. He'd just call out to his friend to come and get him. And also, the other thing that occurred to me, like, this bit may be metal, but this could actually be below here. Could just be a net, there's just no way we could tell unless something bounced off it. So just a thought. Make it a lot safer for them doing it, because they probably are quite a way up. So yeah, so this guy, but seeing this I was trying to figure out whether it was on the 0G plane, but it just seems to go on too long, something not quite right there. But he goes down, and I think he just walks across. They've got rapid release things. He's got another wire waiting over here. So he goes over there, and loosening the wires is you know, a standard practice in the stunt industry. You know, walking Titan. Quick release, reattach type thing, and he had time to put another one on, and he's getting back up there. So this guy heads down now. It looks like he's going down at an angle, but it's just enough room for him to be able to straighten himself up. So he's going down face first. Now they would be, you know, they would be loosening them as he goes down. He'd be grabbing hold of the floor, and this guy, having walked under there and come up through this hole, you know, this is why it's a clever piece of work, because you would think, oh, it couldn't be wires, and yet you know, quick release and reattach over on there, and he doesn't go up in the air. He just scrambles around. And again, if you look at that, you know, is that belt, his pants, his back, could be anything. So it scrambles around, looks up, and then they cut straight to the next scene. Now this does require an explanation, this scene, so I want you to think about how the camera shot is angled, and the fact that, you know, we don't get to view the whole circle, and the fanboys will say, well, it just happened to be like that, fine, but also that there's nobody in the scene at all times. Now that might just be a coincidence as well for the fanboys there. Oh well, that's just the way it happens. But is that also consistent with a fraud for the technology that they had at the time? So they're able to do the fixed camera editing, and, you know, run the film on pass, do the editing in the studio afterwards, and it just so happens that they're all out of sight at certain points. You can see the timings coming up on the side there. I mean, it's just beyond coincidence for me, you know, given everything else. It's just so consistent with a fraud for the technology that was available at the time. So although with the volume up you get the impression that it is live, that could just be them playing this scene with a live voiceover. And I know that's going to sound incredible to some, but just think of all the other errors. The Capcoms is a route to being an astronaut, and we don't even know if they were playing this in the command center at the time. So there's I'd like to get the original so I can prove that this isn't live. Now the shadows actually prove nothing. I've had a good look at them. You know, possibly I could make a case in my favour, but if I spent all that time doing it, the fanboys would just say, inconclusive. So I'm not going to bother do that at this stage. I might get into that a bit later. I have put a couple of marks up on the screen here. You'll see them flash up. It's nothing too impressive. There's you know, because this is done in what I think is 1/6G. It is actually just a couple of little points, nothing conclusive. So we've established that you can get airtime, as it were, in 1/6G. What we haven't established is whether you could do this in 0G running around the track. When I first saw this type of footage, I just thought there's no way that could be in genuine 0G. Now obviously there's no way we can prove conclusively one way or the other, but I just think that doing that running in, even on the loop, you would have to have such a speed to have enough momentum not to be affected by the downward force of the leg movements, that you wouldn't just shoot up in the other direction. So I think that actually looking at this is better evidence for 1/6G than it is for 0G. and I've shown now that you can get the airtime and in 160G, and at certain angles there will be an up and a down where it would be easier to work the angles to get the airtime, I believe. If there happens to be any footage that I've missed that is substantial and you want an explanation for under my ideas of how all of this worked, or me to scrutinise with the equipment that I've got, please feel free to drop a link. If it's a long piece, please do put in the timestamps. However, if it's just a short piece, send me the link and ask me to have a look at it, and that includes fanboys. Right, I'm only going to cover one of the marks because the other one was even weaker than this one, but I just found it interesting that at the point where you might expect to see an edit, there is this change here, and I just wondered if they'd changed the film. I mean, I think they would have done the edits in, shot the film in as long a continuous go as possible, but they would have had to stop at some points. But yeah, it just looks to me like, so just before this, so we've got the film running in that, and then in that, and yeah, it's just a little thing really, not conclusive of anything, but yeah, interesting from a fixed camera angle. Right, and a quick look at the cuts that they did. So what they would have done was run the film and let them go past like that, and this is the worst one. So that's where it doesn't even come back into scene there. So the shadows prove nothing, but they would have gone down, let the film run past, gone down, reset for the next 0G drop, and then started the camera up early so that when they were in the studio they would have been able to do a cut. But you can see that clearly on this one he is out of the scene, just going through, and that's not even on the most sensitive setting. Actually, let's get that onto the most sensitive. So this one, so yeah, look there, that's me moving it. You probably won't be able to see that by the time I edit it, but that's one movement. So yeah, and then but I'll just show you that. So I've done the marking on the timing there, but on the previous loop I didn't allow that one. I didn't cut it short because they weren't all out of the, so he's running and he's not quite out of the scene. So I've been really accurate about this, of where they could have done the cuts. Just thought I'd stick that in there. Right, this is where I sourced the next material from. If you do go over there, be sure to give it a thumbs up. It hasn't got many thumbs up, and it's for the guy actually keeping this stuff on record for us. There's reasons NASA don't want this longer footage coming out, and that's because there's errors in it, and I'm surprised they haven't cleaned it up. And that gets me onto a topic that there's this guy who's going to be releasing some footage next year previously never seen. He got these tapes, the canister tapes, originals, and he's given himself permission to clean it up, which is fine. I'm sure his motivations are very good, but it's this whole idea, NASA are doing it with the moon landings, cleaned up footage. We need the original material, not the cleaned up version. The moment they give themselves permission to do that, it's, it'll be much harder to find the errors. I mean, they'll still be there, the pattern of fraud and what have you. So this footage, there are errors in it. If I just stop this is the speed that it's presented in. Let me cut that there, and this is the actual, that is up, so that's roughly with the floor being more level, and you can see that he's working on a wire system, and this is some evidence of 0G, which is just a cheap trick as far as I'm concerned. And it's like when he's working, it's like he's been told, make sure that you hit that $6 million spacesuit hard enough to cause it to move, which I just don't think you would do. I mean, your life depends on handling that thing sensitively, and also there's a little bit of there you go, that's him doing it. There's a little bit of weightlessness towards the end of this clip where something on there comes up. Let's just move that down and move it over to here. This something comes up over here. I don't want to spend too long on that bit. It's right at the end. There we go. So he bashes that one as well, and I'd just say that's a pop on a wire, possibly. I've always wanted like the idea of there being a helium balloon in there, but I do just think that is a pop on a wire. But you know, me personally. So let's go and have a look at some of these anomalies now. So here's the first one. It just looks like something coming up here and also something tucked into his leg, something imprinting on there. Let's just go back a bit. So yeah, so here, just moving forward now, so if you just watch this come through, and I do run these further forward and further backwards and try and figure out what it might be other than what I think it is, but that just looks like rigging again with a circular bit up here and the wire sort of coming off there. So I only present the ones that I think are good enough, and that's definitely one that I think is consistent with somebody being on a wire. So that's going backwards, and then we'll just take it forwards again. There we go, so that's that one. Okay, so on to the next one. It's just something not quite right with this belt, and the way they've done this, they could actually, with the stop motion, or the very, you know, lots of movement between each frame rate, they could actually change rigging entirely. So here we have is going backwards now, sorry, I should say it's, so yeah, right, let's go back to, so from here, it's moving, moving forward. It just seems that something rises up there, and you know, that going backwards again, sorry, there it is again, and then as we move forward, it just all looks incredibly suspicious to me and a lot like rigging, and we do have a much better one than this as well. So yeah, that just looks like rigging. Going backwards now just to see that last bit again. Consistent with rigging for me. Right, I just want you to have a look at his left hand side. This is his next job. He's got rid of the spacesuits now. But if we can just look at that, so that's his setup on his left hand side. And then he goes off screen. Okay. So he comes back on set. Now ask yourself if whatever system they're using to hide this, the rigging, I think it's something to do with motion blur, the lighting and what have you, but if ever there was an opportunity to see the rigging, if the trick didn't work, what do you think it would look like? Something like this perhaps. Let's just get a bit of a better close up there. Roll round. Oh, totally spoiling it with my. Remember what he would look like earlier? I showed you his left hand side. I mean, does that look like the rigging, or does that look like the rigging? I mean, look at it. How much more like the rigging does it have to look? So let's go back and look at that again. Oh, look at that. So I think this black bit here is a shadow being caused by him, but the rest of it, I mean, look at that. If ever there was a case for we're looking at rigging, I mean, could it get more obvious than that? Let's just go back a bit. Okay, so moving forward again. even the harness going round to the bump. Right there, I just noticed that it seems to be coloured in the same thing, and that's why we don't always notice it. It must have just caught a bad light reflection as he came through. Oh, that's interesting. So this is why I think they haven't got, NASA don't put this stuff into circulation going backwards. We just have to watch that again. It's just too good. So with that last clip with the totally obvious harness, I have checked it to see if it's anything that it could be accounted for by the fanboys. Now the fanboys always have an excuse for everything, you know, there's no doubt about that. It's whether it's a reasonable one, and there's a shadow that I noticed at some point where they're approaching the Skylab, which I thought was potentially good evidence, but I really did look into it, and I think they could make a good case that it was something on the window. Right, so I just wanted to have a look at this spin. So he does this spin, and it's just at the end here. I haven't prepped this one up very well, I just wanted to make that note. So as he does this final turn, this little black thing appears. I think we're getting close. So yeah, you see what looks like that wire cable there, and that thing there. Anyway, that was that. So it wasn't not as good, but it just, something seems to come into sight there. And I do wonder whether he changed his rigging, but again, you know, it's just, this is why they don't want the old footage out there, I guess. Or never really wanted it on general release. So this is that turning stunt controlled by me because it goes so fast. But the point is you can do a turn there, and down. So this is a demonstration of how it works from a far view. So the guy jumps up on the right, pulls down, and this guy does his twists. And they could give him a soft landing easy, or just float him off. It would just depend how they want to do it, but see, he gets quite a few twists there. Going backwards now, obviously, and then forwards again. Just important to see that. Right, the gyroscope fraud next. A little background here. I want you to watch him start this up with that tied to with the string tied to the wheel, and then as it starts to slow down, you'll see that it straightens up and is pretty much going level the other way, and this is important to how I think they did the Ford, because I think you could get it to go a lot longer hanging that way, especially if you started it up and set the spinning part on the, I'll show you as it comes up. So so he starts ducking under it, but you can see it's going this way now. It will level out eventually. I don't know who she is, nothing to do with me. Yeah, so there you go. That's the thing that I want you to see, and to see that it got started up. He spun it up while that piece of string is attached. Okay, so we've seen that. On to the next one. This is really standard stuff. I quite like the look of this gyroscope, so I stuck this one in. And again, nothing difficult here, and I would risk you get a shorter time with setting it up this way than if you used to have it hanging down the other way. So let's get into this.
In weightlessness.
Now let me just show you. What I have here is just one of the little hand gyroscopes that you can buy at the dime store. And first of all, I want to show you about what a body does when it's in 0G, and that is when you let it go, it just drifts. Now, if you translate that body, or if you hit it, it moves in translation, and it also tumbles. You notice it tumbles the whole time. And we can hit it in a different direction, and it just keeps on tumbling. and moving in the direction you hit it. There's no damping. There's no effort on the part of the body to maintain itself in the position that it was in the beginning. All right. There's my gyro. There's my string, looking to get tangled. Now I'm going to turn this little rascal loose. There. Okay. And I'm going to use these two soda straws in order to provide the forces that I need. Now I've got this gyro spinning quite fast now. And now notice when I hit it with a straw or deflect it. See, it moves in translation, does it? Just exactly the way it did before. But you notice that when I hit it, it doesn't want to tumble or drift in rotation. It maintains its rigidity in space. And this is a principle that's very widely used in spacecraft. Now, remember I told you that the spin axis is up this way, the rotation is this way, and that's the way I've got it set up on this gyro now. Now, if I push on that side of the disc, I expect the gyro to tip this way and show the bottom to you. So let's see what happens if I do that. I also have a little trouble with friction here, wanting to run it off the straws. Now you see what I did? I was going like this with it, but it was precessing 90 degrees from the way that I was trying to get it to go. Now the next thing I want to do is slow this rascal down. Let's try doing it this way, and get our wheel going a little slower speed. Try to get it going at about half the speed we had initially. All right, I think it's going at about half speed now. Now, I don't know if you can see this very well on your screen, but the spin axis, the very tip where the bearing is starting to wobble a little bit. It's wobbling like this. And we're at a slower speed now. Now what I'm going to try to do is make this gyro stand up again. Now I know that it's spinning this way, and the spin axis is away from you. So in order to make it spin this way, I've got to push here in order to make that part go down. So I'll take it and I'll see I'm pushing on the side and it's precessing 90 degrees.
There's something about precession that seems just a little miraculous. The fact that the gyro tips in a direction 90 degrees or perpendicular from the way you might expect it to tip. Here on Earth, the force of gravity is constantly acting to tip the gyroscope over. So it's not necessary to apply a torque, as Jerry Carr did with his straws. The rotation that we see here is precession. As the gyro slows down, it has less stability, and also the precession rate speeds up. As it slows down, we can also see its axis tip lower and lower. Let's take another look at the precession of our little gyroscope in space.
Now, let's slow this thing down just a little bit more. I'm going to try to slow it down so slow that you could almost see the spokes going. You have to be careful not to touch it or you'll end up either tumbling it or with a handful of gyro. All right, now it's going so slow you can almost see the spokes go around. Now, let's tip it again. This time I'm going to try to tip it forward. If I want to tip it down, I need to push here, which means I want to put a force on it. Like so. The spacecraft systems, the Apollo system uses a little gyro like this, a set of them, and it uses these gyros to remember its orientation. What we do is
So just as he finishes off the scene here, I just want to talk about the trust we have to have in NASA for every cut and edit and going off scene incident. It's on the back of what we've just seen with them on the harnesses and getting caught out there. You know, why should we believe how this is presented? So where that little gyroscope disappeared up out of the scene, and then another one drops down, you know, that you think, watching this, you just think, if you don't understand that it's a fraud, it's just a perfect opportunity for them to trick you, and that's what they're doing. You know, the cuts and edits are there for a reason. They get as many takes as they like with this particular scene, and we have errors consistent with the technology at the time, but it's more than that. It is their trust, your trust in them, that they are exploiting all of the time, with every cut, with every scene. And the pattern of fraud is just so very genuine. You know, it really is there throughout the whole ages of NASA's history. So next up out of NASA's magic bag is in that goes with that scene, that presentation, is a magnetism trick. So I've cut that way short because it's magnetism overrides gravity. Why would I even bother going to that, given what we've seen? I might try and figure out how they did it at some stage, but anyway. So this is from that site where I found the really damning evidence from. I haven't looked through any of this section thoroughly. I just wanted to play it out as I was talking. And make my appeal to get the original footage. What I'm going to do is set up a GoFundMe. I'd like people to share any experiences they have of that type of thing. I've never set up a GoFundMe before, so if you want to put your experiences of it in the comments box, that would be helpful. And I want to get the footage back from the two Freedom of Information Act requests that I've put in for the space shuttle footage, do the analysis, prove my worth, as it were, and then I'll put in the request for the footage. Well, I'm going to have to start a fund to get the money. I mean, there was an incident at work this year, business is really down, possibly might even go under, but I'm hoping that I'll get through it. But I will need assistance to purchase any more materials, so I will set up a GoFundMe for this purpose of getting the footage, and then once I've set that up, I will then, if it overruns, let's say I'll request the footage once it gets to $4,000, and if the amount continues to accumulate that I can get, then I can go. What I want to do is put in for missions 4 and 5 on the STS after that, and then 100 when they were building the ISS. I want to get a couple from there, and possibly a couple from when they met up with Mir, and we will be able to build this evidence against NASA, because we will get pieces like this. And now this is really interesting for me. Like what we're watching now is they've stuck the camera up on the wall and they were just recording, and this is what I would expect them to do a lot. Now they're able to do it now at this point because they are able to use the stop motion setting, so the reduced camera frame rate would allow them to do all sorts of things. Obviously they got the lower quality footage available, but they would have realised as time was going on and the camera technology was improving that this would be more of a problem. So I just think it's going to be brilliant to get the early footage from the STS, because we can expect this type of footage, and if it isn't there, that's evidence against them. Why didn't they stick up a camera on the wall? Oh yeah, that's and if they have done it, it will be in this format. It will be in the format where they have to use wires, and now that we figured they probably spray painted those wires and rigging in the same colours as the uniform. It just at certain angles it just lights up, and that's why we're able to see it. But there will be errors and anomalies, and it will be able to build, and the pattern of fraud, we'll be able to build an excellent case against them.
And see, that's where I guess that's my concern, is how will you know that it's not this lens that you have leading you to the conclusion that, well, it's obviously
I won't know,
fake.
but they had every opportunity to convince me. They had every opportunity with the 60s and the 70s and the 80s and the 90s, and when you look at that footage, it's completely and totally fake. I don't know anybody who would go back and look at any of the footage that's being provided and told to you is out of from space in the 70s and the 80s without coming to the conclusion that it's completely and totally fake. Now the problem is at this point is a lot of the CGI is getting so good that it's indecipherable from reality. That's the scary part. But they had an opportunity to teach people.
And that's it for me. You know, it's that opportunity that they had. The footage that we've got here versus the really good footage from the Skylab era where they are in genuine zero-G. The stuff that's in genuine zero-G should be out in the arena already. They've had their opportunity, and we are entering a very scary period for humanity where they can do these what are called deep fakes. There was a great piece done on it on Secure Team 10 a couple of months back. And why is the footage from the Skylab just so consistent with a fraud? So we get images like this where we get plenty of footage and it's long and it looks completely fraudulent and is fraudulent, just proven to be fraudulent, and yet the high quality footage that there is of genuine zero-G is in short bursts. The dubious footage where they're running around their circle, which probably requires 1/3 gravity at least, that is in the same length of time that they would be able to get from a free fall on a zero-G plane. It just, for me, I just think people totally miss the point about the pattern of fraud because they don't study it, they take it as gospel, and you know, but when you do, it just comes up with so many problems, and the important point is I almost did the repeat, is they had their opportunity. You know, this should, the really good quality footage should be in the arena of public viewing already, you know, and yet all what we get is restricted viewing, and this is why, because it looks like what we're seeing now, and it is just so obvious that it's, you know, that there's something wrong with it. So the more footage we get, I think, the better case we're going to be able to have to build against them, because we will detect more errors, we will notice the pattern of fraud, there will be, and it will all be, it all runs exactly with the technology that they have in cinema special effects. It doesn't run with camera technology. Anyway, it's quite hard to be succinct about it, but I'm just going to run through this footage really quickly, and I'm going to put a link into the description because I know there are people who are going to be just as keen as me to get a good look at this, and they'll pick up things that I will miss. So I will put the link in the description, but this is the footage I'm running. I've sped it up quite a bit. Oh, and let's just go back to that section there, because this is what I mean about the when they do a cut. So when they turn the camera off, it's, you get that kind of thing. So this is how we can tell turning the camera off versus edits. And anyway, just a small point. So I'll just pull that out a bit, and we'll just race through this quickly. I mean, you know, again, it's that the whole thing of figuring out how they did it, because would you believe it that it just so happens that he looks like he's on strings? This possibly could be they're recording through a glass screen, I don't know. Getting the reflections of the lights, making it look like there could be a solid object there, but there would be a path around it for the wires. So anyway, and fanboys, just keep in mind what you've just witnessed regarding, you know, we don't know where the ceiling is on that. Is there a gap behind this? Anyway, so the other people can look at it and they will figure out. I'm going to have a closer look at it, and again, there's the camera cut, and then we've got the next scene coming up. So I mean, you know, here's another long scene from a fixed camera view, which is what we would expect, but just if you watch that, I'm obviously just racing through it. I did slow this down, recorded it twice, so I had it on the speed it was presented and at quarter speed. So you know, this is quite a long scene, and you know, what do you know, it all could be done with wires. That's just so on he goes, on he goes, on he goes. Right, and this is the eating scene. This is how it's presented in the original one. I think there's a cheap trick at the end of this, but I'm just gonna flick this up the right way. Not quite so spacey looking now, is it? So let's just get in a bit. It's quite a short scene. So yeah, they do this scene. This is the eating scene, and I think there's a trick where he just pulls out something out of the drawer right at the end. So on it goes, on it goes. He goes into the drawer. Oh, no, it's not yet. But no, I mean, so far there's been zero evidence of zero-G for this long eating scene. And remember, it was presented the other way up, so it just looks disorientating. Let me just flick it back there. So they present the whole thing like this. You know, it's it's just hilarious. Oh, I've got where's that come up? Oh, hold on. Let's just flip that round again. Yeah, so again, like, you know, when they know they're recording a meal scene in with the modern day technology, they want to make a big fuss out of everything being zero-G, but no, not here. They don't want to show us the water tricks. They don't want to show us their food floating. You know, it's all just runs in time with the technology available. That's me just adjusting the speed. Obviously it's upside down because it's this counter to how they produced it. Oh, I can't believe I didn't remember it being this long. But there's only, I think, is that it? There's only one bit. This is it, where he gets something out. No, not even now. He's putting his thing away. Oh, there's a tiny bit at the end where they do a zero-G. And so this is right side up. So yeah, again, so they got this one. All can be done on wires, and then this one. So I think this is the right way up for this one. So the thing that they're working with here is just so this thing here is just it's just a spring. It's just and people might want to do close-ups of this. I haven't done it yet, so there might be a scientific harvest to be had here, because that's what they called Mission 2, a scientific harvest. And then I do have footage of a walkthrough as well. Is this it? Oh no! And so they've got all this incredibly long footage, and then they have this where it's I'm playing at speed. Oh, actually, I slowed this down when I recorded it. But they have this footage, which is really short again. It just, it ties in with the exact timings of a zero-G flight. So they got the really long footage of highly dubious, looks like they're all working on wires, and then they have this footage of a water bubble, which I don't think they could have faked at the time, and this happens to be within the time frame of a zero-G flight. So is this the original? Is this all that they have of it? I mean, it's just astonishing. That is just the pattern of fraud that I'm talking about. If there's anything that exemplifies the pattern of fraud, it is having all these long clips, and then of the water clips it's a really short clip. And there is a walkthrough that they do of the Skylab. It's so dismal. I think they actually did it on a plane and did a couple of ducks down because the sound level. And this one again, this is done in the stop motion, and arguably this might have been done on the plane, and they just used the stop motion. But you know, I haven't looked at it overly closely, but with that really slow frame rate, it is just so easy for them to insert a cut where they reset the plane and go again, and you can never ever tell the difference. And I think that's why they wanted the zero-G plane, which they called the Space Shuttle. Anyway, fascinating stuff. I'm going to drop the link in the description for the people who enjoy this kind of thing to look at.